Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy. Go to carrielutz.com and sign up for 30 free micro trainings on financial survival.
$14.90 WGCH. This is Carrie Lutz. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. Our weekly go-round with Ranting Andy Hoffman of Miles Franklin is upon us. Andy, happy Monday.
And to you, especially after our Giants won last night.
Hey, was that great or what?
It's awesome.
Hey, I was in Vegas, was it 5 or 6 years ago when the Giants won the Super Bowl? And it was my partners and I, and we'd go to the Mirage giant Super Bowl party with dozens of huge screens hanging all over the place. And the number of New Yorkers as opposed to Patriots fans was about 10-1. And if you remember that game, the last 2 minutes of the game, first the Giants scored, they were ahead, and we're screaming, we're going crazy. And I'm not the biggest sports fan, but I love the bowl games. Then New England scores, and they're ahead, and we're silent, and the New England table is going nuts. And then the last play, remember, he catches it on his head, and we just go totally insane. I mean, we've been drinking for God knows how many hours, and the Patriots fans just got down and went underneath the table in total dejection. And then the best thing, and maybe this is a good lesson for what can happen in a bank run, there was a sports book run because there were so many New Yorkers. The take on the game was about 10-1 New York. And I watched sports books run out of money multiple times paying off these bets. It was the biggest hit that the sports books in Vegas had ever taken in history. And I said, gee, maybe this is what a bank run looks like for people. But at least they were bringing in, Andy, like pallets full of money stacked up, like, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and it was going out so fast you couldn't believe it. So I said, this could be a bank run. It's a sports book run. Maybe there's something to be said there. But
well, I wrote today about the mainstream, about how they get things wrong, and I'm thinking about it.
You think?
Yeah, and I was thinking, I was relating it to the Giants game because I've got so many emails from people talking about the Packers, and everyone picked the Packers. And I'm doing the math, and I'm going, well, why does everyone think the Packers are such heavy favorites? They had the worst pass defense in the league. Mm-hmm. They also, the Giants just played them a few weeks ago. It was pretty much close to a tie until the very end. Giants have these, they're peaking. They have all these players coming back from injuries, and they beat the Packers in Green Bay a few years ago.
Yeah.
But, everyone assumed that Packers will win, and once again, they were badly wrong.
That's so great that you say that, because this is why it pays to be a contrarian. And one of the most savvy, astute, canny investors and sports gamblers I know, we'll just call him Mojo, for lack of a better name, because he doesn't want me to identify him. This guy bets right about 80%. And what does he do? He looks for contrarian bets. He looks for point spreads, 6 and 8. He says they favor dogs. And then he bets under overs, which you can't make any money doing that, the proposition bets. And yet he looks for teams that have really good offenses that have been subdued for 3 weeks, and everyone is saying the under. He bets the over. And contrarian wise, plus he's got a knack for this, let's face it. He wins at virtually every sport. And this is what you need in this day and age to really succeed at investing. Be a contrarian. I was at a dinner last night. There's a doctor, a couple other guys who were pretty with it businessmen, and they say, what do you do? And I say, well, I basically have a radio show, the Financial Survival Network. We talk about the collapse of the American economy, the global economy, and how your dollars are going to become worthless. And these are people who are probably too highly educated, financially well off, and they looked at me like, I had dropped in from, Area 51. They had dropped me in, and like, how could you say something like that? And then we talked about it for a while. One guy was in insurance, and I said, look, you sell insurance. If you tell me there's a 1 in 10 chance I'm going to drop dead in the next 10 years, what am I going to do? I'm going to buy insurance. If I tell you there's a 1 in 10 chance that in the next 3 years your dollars are going to become worthless, what do? And when I put it in his terms, he got it. So I guess we just have to keep chipping away at the mass consciousness, and the giants winning when they shouldn't have, according to the mainstream media, is a great analogy for what you should be investing in, right?
Well, I'd say over the past decade, I've gone from a 1 on the acceptance scale of, people I write to, including my family and friends, to a 2. So I'll eventually get to a 10, and probably it'll go from 2 to 10 a lot quicker than 1 to 2.
Hey, well, you've gone up 100%, and
that's right.
That's an annualized rate, uncompounded, of 10% a year.
Right.
So, hey, you're really making headway. But, yeah, people either buy into it or they bury their heads. Now, my feeling is, anytime people would tell me something, I'd have to say, well, they're probably wrong, but what if they're right? You always have to play that scenario. And yet, when it comes to something as sacred as the existing economic system, nobody will make that leap of faith, that leap of judgment, which is why we have jobs, frankly, right?
Yeah, well, people don't want to. There's a see no evil, hear no evil aspect of that's in your genes, and what we're talking about is very unpleasant. And most people can't protect themselves even if they wanted to. So, it's sad. It's sad that the doctors and lawyers don't want to do it because they can, but they're very rare. Most people can't.
Yeah, it's true, and I plead guilty to being a reformed lawyer. And and then when you look, you see Europe. 9 countries get downgraded at one time, and it makes me believe that the U.S. government wants that euro to be precarious and it's under attack, because as the euro looks worse, the dollar looks better, vice versa. And what's your take on those 9 countries? Are they toast?
Well, first off, I'll say that long ago I stopped even looking at the dollar index. As far as I'm concerned, it was just a tool for the cartel to use as one of their algorithms, meaning dollar index goes up, hit gold. And it got to the point where there's been so little correlation between the dollar index and gold for several years now that I don't think anyone really looks at it that way anymore. Obviously, Europe is falling apart, which is a major positive catalyst for gold, just as the dollars, the U.S. financial system's woes are a catalyst for gold as well. But that said, forgetting the dollar index per se and the machinations behind moving that index around, which I believe is not that important, those 9 countries are, yes, they are toast, as is the United States. It's a totem pole. The United States is at the top of it because it has the world's reserve currency. The European countries, aside from the UK, cannot print their own money, so they are lower on the totem pole. Germany is higher up because they have the most leverage in the euro, but they too will be vulnerable at some point, and then the UK, and then us. But at the bottom of the totem pole are these countries getting downgraded dramatically right now. And we were just talking before this call about, I think the Portuguese, you can go on Zero Hedge, the Portuguese spreads to the German bund blew out by 200 basis points this morning alone, implying that it's pretty much a goner. And Greece obviously pretty much is a goner already. You even saw S&P this morning talking about you better get a deal quickly or else you're going to be downgraded to zero. And so, yeah, they are toast. France lost its AAA rating. Italy's almost junk. They all should be junk, but, it's a process. We are never going to see any upgrades in a generation, and eventually you'll all see them be junk.
I had this concept, and I did it in a report, a Triple Lutz report a few weeks ago, is that there should be a bankruptcy court for countries. So like Greece, they go and they file Chapter 11, and they pretty much wipe out or restructure all the debt, and then they go and they get rid of all the government programs that are redundant, that are destructive. And just like for companies, a company goes Chapter 11, like American Airlines chapters out. So first thing they do is they say to all their unsecured lenders, thanks for being with us all these years. We really appreciate your support. Here's 10 cents on the dollar and have a nice life. And then they go to the secured guys and they say, well, we got this plane. We're paying you as if it's worth 50 million, but it's really only worth 10. So therefore, either we revalue the lease, or you can have the plane because we got GE Capital that will give us money and we can buy new planes. So take it or leave it. And they basically get rid of a lot of their debt. They say to the unions, hey, sorry, but, no, you're going to have to fly 30 hours a month instead of 20. Sorry, but that's the way it goes. And that's what countries need to be able to do, but they haven't figured out how to do it yet. That's the only way out, is to really default, repudiate debt, and cut costs. And then you'll be like Iceland, where Iceland wouldn't vote to bail out the bankers, but all of these things that they're going through, these machinations, are all about saving the bankers' bacon rather than the people. And until that attitude changes, nothing good is going to come of any of this.
Well, fortunately for Iceland, they are a self-sufficient nation. They also don't have that many people and are isolated from the rest of Europe. So they were able to survive that very painfully, but without social unrest. That's not going to be the case in Europe. And absolutely, you always have to be practical. It's like what Ron Paul says. Look, I don't care how much it's going to hurt, but you got to do the right thing. You got to take the people, all the military back home. You got to cut the spending. That's the only way to try to salvage something. Where they're going right now, they're going to salvage nothing. But the problem politically is, to do that right thing is going to be tragic. If Greece said today, we are out, you can't kick us out because we quit. We're out of the euro. We're not paying back any of our $400 billion of debt, and basically screw you to everybody. What's going to happen is, of course, they will have no financing of any kind. No one will ever give them money. They're going to have to truly have austerity at home because they have no financing coming from the ECB or the IMF or the EFSF or the Fed swap or the LTRO. They literally will have no money. And they're going to have to massively cut back on everything social and infrastructure in the country. It's going to entail major economic hardship. And of course, their currency is going to go back to the drachma, which will be devalued. Right now, I read the other day, it's trading as if it's 1,500 drachmas to the dollar. And I think it was like 500 drachmas to the dollar when they got into the euro. So you'd have massive hyperinflation on top of a massive recession. And for politicians, that's hard to swallow. So they should do that, but they won't. They'll stick it down to the very end, get every dollar printed possible from every possible source until the hyperinflation is unleashed on all of Europe.
Yeah, because we never learn from history, right? The one thing that history teaches us about man is that he never learns from history. And all of this was foreseeable and treatable. It's just like Steve Jobs. They saw the shadow on his X-ray. If he had it removed then, he'd be around today. He put it off. He put off the inevitable. And as a result, he's gone now. And that's what's going to happen with these countries, unfortunately.
And people need to realize that we are way past the point of no return. This whole concept of, well, things are bad, but if we do this, we can get out of it. I am saying right now, and have for years, there is no solution. The solution is for the system to crumble and start all over again. And for people listening, the only goal you can have is to put yourself in position to survive the transition to the new system and hopefully thrive.
Yeah, and if you're positioned and you survive, then you will thrive. And in fact, that's what we say on the Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy, because we're in a new economy where all the things you thought you knew, all the strategies you had for making ends meet, for prospering, are going to be stood on their head, and it's back to basics.
Amen.
Hey. And on that note, we got to wind up right now. Where do we find you, Ant?
MilesFranklin.com.
All right. We'll talk to you in a week. And actually, might be a little more than a week. I'm off to Vancouver because the weather's so great in the middle of January, right?
Yeah.
All right. You be well.
All right. You too.